lost it. Welcome back, everybody. So Commissioner Treese, after when we broke for lunch, she asked me what was in these two bags. One is a store-bought 3-day supply, 3-day kit that fits in a backpack. And then the other was I took that go bag that Clean Water Services gave us with a little emergency kit and flashlight, and then I added stuff to it. The one fun thing, I used to have just one of these inflatable solar lights that I also use for camping, but I upgraded it to the one where it'll power your phone. So
Did you add the masks after the pandemic?
no, actually, the story there was for my original earthquake kits, I had N95s. And then when COVID started
Oh,
and public health asked people if they had any, I said, oh, Marnie, I have a whole bunch of these. She's like, no, only paramedics and people like that would have them. And I said, or people like me who have in all of my earthquake kits, because I have them for my cars and my kit at home. So they were all in their original packaging, and I brought it into her one day. I said, here, go put these to use. But you're right. Now I have some of the other ones that go in my kit. So
I'm looking on Amazon right now at this one, and it runs about $130, $150.
oh, this one wasn't that much, but I might have gotten it on sale when I got some other things, because I needed to stay with the $50 rule. So
that's your rule.
no, that's the
Ethics.
state
Oh, you bought it
for all state employees, because I bought that for Daniel.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was a personal rule. $50.
No. So, okay, so we're back. So we're the third group to do the report out.
yes.
So our scenario was scenario 2, which if I brought my directions out.
I can read it to you.
Great.
Weekday night, sometime between midnight and 3 a.m. and it's dark. It's a winter night, cold, below freezing temperatures, and a little breezy.
So it's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And I've just been awakened during my nice, warm, sleep-filled night under the covers. Everything shook, made a lot of noise. I'm wicked scared. But the good news is I'm home. Previously, I thought that I would, no matter where I was, that I would just make myself useful, right? And my husband has told me in no uncertain terms that no matter where I am supposed to get home, because he would worry about me. So bye, folks. I have to go home first, which is not my ordinary instinct. So I feel a little conflicted about this. Okay, so first, assumptions. Assumption that it'll be 2 weeks before any outside help comes. We are on our own for 2 weeks. The roads are blocked with debris. There's no electricity, and electrical lines are covering the ground, including roads. So you know how some electrical lines go from the pole to the house. The ground and street lamps and signal lines are down all over the place as well. You know, remember Mayhem, Mr. Mayhem? It's mayhem. It's been rainy and cold, so the ground is soggy. So what we learned through the 1990s, when we had that great flood, the ground was saturated. There were slides. Creeks and river are full and overflowing. We didn't even worry about Hag Lake and how downstream of there it's bad. So it's cold, wet weather continues. The point is, for 2 weeks, before any help comes. It's wicked uncomfortable. Have you ever been on a weekend camping trip that's rained the whole time? That's what this scenario is all about. No water service, no sewer service, potty problems. Where are you going to poop? Where are you and your neighbors going to poop? Do you have one of those portable poop buckets in your neighborhood? No medical help for injuries. Cell towers are gone, so there's no cell service. So it's not like with that, what was that Sandy hurricane that New York City had, and some parts of town didn't have electricity, so they brought in generators for people to charge up their phones. We're not going to be so lucky. Assume that neighborhood people will self-organize. Humanity, when you put them through tough experiences, tends to at least behave well for the first few days. So remember, this happened weekday during the night. So we're at home. So folks who have kids, whether you're commissioners, whether you're employees all throughout the organization, you have to have a safety plan with your kids. If it's during the day, right, they're at school. We went through this stuff at Metro. So we were wondering, we started with, so what do we need to know about our role? And what's written down about our role, right? And do we have an MOU amongst ourselves about what we're going to make sure we do? But also making sure that we take care of our personal life, our kids and our families, and appropriate kits for that. We know from experience that we have some kind of role with regard to declaring emergencies, but do we know when we'll have to do that? CPO and emergency manager, I can't remember that part.
I
Oh,
don't,
you were trying to read my writing. Well, I'll figure that one out. So,
thought that's what it
okay. Oh, CAO probably.
said. Yeah.
Yeah. Or does a CAO and the emergency manager do it and we don't have to worry about it? What's our risk management plan? And when was the last time it was adopted by the board? If it gets adopted by the board. Clackamas County Chair Smith told me they just did recently. And she asked me about ours and I was like, no idea. So I'll ask. When was the last, when was the last time that plan was updated and adopted? How do we speak with constituents in different languages to help them? That's one thing we really learned during COVID. It's not enough to speak English, right? We have to ensure that they have information in the languages they speak. Who needs to be in touch with who and how do we do that, especially if cell phones don't work? Okay, assume people with kids, including board colleagues, must go home or to school to collect their kids. We were already at home, so that made our lives a lot easier. But if it's a different scenario, not so lucky. Assume that as public employees, once your family is settled, we assume that as public employees, you must report to the nearest work location or even a different local government. Firefighters, for example, do this sort of thing. If they're off duty and they're at home, right, there are TVF&R firefighters that live in Sandy. Get your family settled, report to the nearest fire department. Once again, county emergency plan. When did we last adopt it? The board hasn't seen one. Do we refer to it as the crisis management plan? And we assume it makes a lot of things clear that we don't know about. You know, what defines our role by code? Does the county, is there county code that does that? Do state rules define it? We don't know. No plan, no clue. Also, in the third question, and I disorganized my papers. since I moved. The third question was
What questions do you have as commissioners
of the
for the
agency.
agency?
Yep,
regarding
regarding
preparedness.
preparedness and response. Well, we know this, that at each time there's a new commissioner, and then also as a new commission group, that we need training. And we need to understand our role, and maybe there's some kind of kit related to that. Much like when each of us started, we had a meeting with our county council, Alan Raplier, to go over basic rules. But for this stuff, we don't know. We had that half-hour, 20-minute work session on July 18th or June 18th, 2019. That's all I've got. And after COVID, it isn't enough.
And I didn't even get that because I wasn't here in
Oh,
2019.
right. So is there a kit we should each have in our role? And one idea we had is commissioners could serve as like train the trainers. So training others. So when we're out in our community, should we be helping to train our neighbors on preparedness? And as a community, there was a heck of a lot more going on after that whole Cascadia task force. You probably remember this when you were mayor, have your 3-week supply of water or 7 gallons or whatever it equated to be and whatnot. So I don't know, Commissioner Willie, in your neighborhood, have you guys gotten together? Yeah, and we moved into a pre-existing neighborhood and lots of different neighbors since. So I don't know what my neighborhood's going to be like, but so we'll see. The great unknown. So any questions?
I was thinking when Commissioner Pam Treese was presenting their
Scenario?
scenarios with Commissioner Jerry Willie, I was thinking, like, if you are in this building and you can't get out or get to where you need to go, you have to be stuck here. I was wondering if there's like any way, like, is there blankets? What do people use if they get stuck in this building? And I looked at you, John. I don't know why I did that, but because you're there. I'm so sorry. I should have been looking at the rest of the commission, the chair, but I was just wondering, like, how do you get comfortable in a room where it has all these supplies and blankets? Your question.
I think that was one of the questions we
Yeah.
were bringing up about first aid kits and, where supplies are. And we need to address those as we get into our next
Yeah.
section.
I just assumed that I have what I have on my body and in my car.
Yeah, this is why I always dress warm, but that's just me.
Well, I have,
You just warm because you're.
That's why I have 4 pairs of golf shoes in my car.
I am raising concerns about the blankets and where they are.
well, in my, I have a clothes basket that has my earthquake backpack. And after the Great East Japan earthquake and then that trip, no, after that earthquake, before I went on the trip, I went through CERT training. So I have my whole CERT helmet and kit, but I haven't kept up with the triage or the first aid part of that. So, but that's what is in my laundry basket that sits in the back of my van. But when we went away on vacation a couple of years ago, I took it out and it's sitting on top of the rollout garbage can that has my home earthquake kit.
So true confessions, I've told my children that I will be picked up by helicopter and brought here. And I think that they still believe that.
Last time
John's writing that down.
John's gonna be at your house. We've heard.
Yeah, exactly.
Your house is gonna slide down the hill.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, I don't live in a floodplain either. But mention what your Pam, mention what your sister experienced.
Well, I was telling Catherine at the break that my sister was in, and I think Roy mentioned he was in the San Francisco earthquake. She was down there as an HR consultant in a recruitment process at a hotel just outside of San Jose. And so that was I believe that was very close to the center. And they got under the tables, they did all the things that they were supposed to do. Then they left to go outside to a meeting area, and it was there hadn't been any rain, and she said, I just remember sloshing through all this water like over my ankles, and I couldn't understand what was happening. And then they realized that the water in the swimming pool had just 2/3 of it had come out during the earthquake. And that's the degree of movement that was in the ground at that point in time. She said it was just amazing.
Yep. So imagine what our local creeks and rivers are going to be like. That's why I just, for my own well-being, I just categorize it as chaos. So I don't get totally overwhelmed. So as I mentioned, there was no wrong way to go about this. But I thought after we did the small group report out and asked any clarifying questions that we might talk about possible information the board may need of staff or the CAO, and discuss if we want to be any more prepared than we currently are. What kind of cadence do you want to go through any of those discussions and learning exercises and so forth?
I'd like to request that as we think about this moving forward, that we, this, from the standpoint of an earthquake, I think of that as, being a pretty all-inclusive type of event. But I'd also like this to be a discussion around any type of emergency preparedness as well. So are you okay with that? I mean, just,
Oh, because the ice storm and wildfire and smoke and pandemic we've been through isn't enough.
well, but a lot of these, I know, but these, what is our role? What's the chain of authority? All those apply no matter what the emergency is.
Right. Any emergency type. What's our role?
From catastrophic to manageable.
And I would like that to be something like that comes to our board, that we adopt and that we shared with the public, that for the Board of Washington County Commissioners, these are their roles and responsibility. in Catastrophic,
Catastrophic.
so it not necessarily like a presentation, but an actual document like we adopt, as well as the risk management plan that you were talking about, Chair Harrington, to come to our board, like board approved, because we might have things in codes, and then we might have some things in the charter, and then we might have something at the state level in a statute. So how did all those trickle down to, our board? And
The slides are in there. Yeah. We don't know what we don't know.
yeah, and I think the
Do you-
training,
Oh.
go ahead. What were you gonna-
No, go keep going.
the training, that PowerPoint presentation, while I didn't look closely in details of what's the content, but I would appreciate if we could get a training for our board, if something like that was put together. And then also, I think one of the thing I appreciate is the street routes, that little book that people get to connect to social services outside in the community. If we could get something like that as a contact, like, will be ideal. And I think should be a rule of thumb for every board commissioner should get a bag like that full of stuff. That way, we know what's in it, what are the essentials, not necessarily we build our own kit. Because when a catastrophe happens, that's the first thing you grab. Like I was reflecting back to my own journey as in war. I remember telling, my mom asking me, what do you want to take? And what was important to me, and I still remember, is my dresses. So she grabbed a plastic bag and grabbed a few dresses, and I tried to carry it, but I think the second city we hitchhiked to, I lost the clothes. But you grab something, and I think it's important that we know what needs to be in there, and we're letting the community know what needs to be in there. But if we don't know what are the essentials, and we don't have a bag that we can say, hey, this is what needs to be in, it's hard to prepare our community. So it might be looping it back to roles and responsibility, but I know we have a bag from Clean Water Services with a list, but
So, Diane and Mark and I had a brief conversation about CWS preparedness as well. Think about all the major pipes and community expectations, and we learned a lot from the or I did at least from the CWS team about field ops and setup there. So I know we have field ops both at Washington County and CWS. So I think the biggest learning for me out of COVID is that since we're elected officials and some people know that, they expect us to have answers. And I don't even begin to know what the questions are. So we've seen in other places in the United States that if elected officials don't have answers, they're on the chopping block after, when sense returns, whenever that is. And I'd rather not have my predecessors be set up poorly. So we haven't, what do
One of
you
the
think,
things that I
Commissioner
was-
Willie?
I was talking to Pam about before lunch was, we had a presentation on what emergency routes are in my rural areas out there. That would be, the focus is that we will maintain emergency routes so that hopefully the bridges don't cave in and all that kind of stuff, so that people can get in and get out. And in the city of Banks is the one that kind of called that to my attention. So that's one of the things the Rural Roads Committee has done is we're trying to communicate what those routes are going to be for the, at least Gaston, Banks, and probably not North Plains necessarily because they're close to some major arterials, but
So imagine, and when you mentioned that at the work session, I was like, yep, that's in my district too. So I'd like to learn more about that. But imagine that of the four of us, the only one who remains uninjured and able to function is Commissioner Fye. So would she need to know ahead of time? Because what if the governor, the emergency experts are going to be there, but what if the governor starts to convene local officials, whoever's around, for some status updates and whatnot, like she did during COVID? Now, I think the good news in a non-virus kind of thing is I got really tired of how COVID was politicized in those governor meetings. And I think for a earthquake, we'll be a little bit better off, or at least based upon what George Murdoch, not George Murdoch, George, who was the mayor in Redmond for a very long time.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Cause I was, he was on the task force, the state task force,
Yeah, his wife is the former mayor, sure.
Yes.
but he's no longer the mayor, or he won't be after the
Yeah,
election.
I think you're right.
Yeah, so anyway, so what do you guys want to do? Hi there, Commissioner Rogers, welcome back.
I would like to set up an action plan to address the issues that we're identifying, including the training. I'd like to have a reset on I have the same book on my shelf at home. I'd like to have a relook at the emergency operations guide and make sure that it's up to date.
So I'm starting with a clean sheet of paper.
Okay.
So it sounds like, yes, we want to start preparing in 2023.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm
You have that?
I'm here at step one.
Okay. Okay.
I
And now what
thought-
goes under that are a variety of
Yeah, so I
You're
thought
important.
what we might do, now that we've had the opportunity to at least air some of these information needs, is gift this to our CAO and the team to help inform
I was
us.
gonna say.
That's my receiving.
Body language. And I figured that we'll want to have some touchback in the first half of the year. And then something in the second half of the year.
Yeah.
So we'll at least start.
This didn't come up in our discussion, but just want to say, since we're transferring this information to our county administrator, cities, line of communications and touch points, where do they fit in? And
John has all those answers.
okay.
Hey,
So-
John,
I don't,
some things we,
they have emergency managers and they have all kinds of committees.
well, I'm talking about like to an elected, you know, like, because I assume this city managers will probably call you, Tanya, but if the
How do
mayor
you do
calls
that if
you.
there's
and
no
the-
cell phone?
Yeah, how do we, yeah, what is, that question needs to be answered.
as we go through this process too,
Maybe
I
if
know-
it's a little earthquake. Maybe I'm being a little too extreme.
I don't know.
Well, the interesting thing is that depending on where the center of the earthquake is, we could be dealing with tsunamis as well, which tsunamis is gonna impact, from my standpoint, if it's a big one, the Columbia River,
Yeah.
which is downtown Portland. So I don't know, there could be a real ripple effect to this, from this.
Or a simple, like an active shooter in not in necessarily on our board, but city hall. And how do we connect? Like if there's something happens within our city, so how do we, I think, it's not just earthquakes, but yeah, you're right. And if it's a big earthquakes versus small one, either one, but I think we just have to figure out, streamline that, all those touch points for a board of commissioners. You know,
as we look at this plan, I'd like to, and we're talking about the Board of Commissioners here, I'd like to propose that we also include the sheriff.
Mhm.
And because I think that that's a key component here, and I want him or her, as we move forward, to be involved in our discussions, know what we're thinking about, but also to understand what they're thinking about. And the other thing I would like to request is that we do know what an active shooter plan is, or there, I was looking through this, we have bomb threat, we have some other things, but I didn't see in here an active shooter drill. And I think that that's something that you can't open the newspaper without recognizing that this is something we should consider.
Rolling agenda, first meeting in January. Look at,
Active shooter?
no, just look it up. Just look at the rolling agenda in January. Very first meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Potential solution. Oh, sheriff. So it's all of our public safety groups. Next page.
Oh, safety walkthrough.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to not use
I
Debbie
understand.
Downer language. I don't want to be labeled Debbie Downer. Worrying about different scenarios. That's all.
I understand.
So
I guess I'd ask Tanya how she feels about.
I was gonna
this.
say, we kind of handed you. a-
she's actually been through more training.
Yeah, so,
Probably have best practices available through ICMA too.
so first I'll start. Thank you for the gift. And as I said, before break, our emergency management team, we do have John here in the audience, but we have members on Zoom listening in. And so I do want to just acknowledge the leadership of your board having this discussion, because not all electeds are having the discussion. And so that's from a discussion is where action can occur. I know both John and the team have been diligently taking notes through this discussion. So I'm not, I don't feel it's fair to be in a position of directly responding, but we'll come back with an action plan for your board's consideration of how to have those touch points throughout the year, and also have the board engagement to see if those are the right touch points, if we're bringing you the right sequence of information back. From a structure standpoint within Washington County, right now, emergency management has reported to our human resources department. And as the board recalls, that was part of support services. Effective January 1st, the John Wheeler and team will be reporting through Aaron Calvert, Assistant County Administrator, to have a higher I will say profile for emergency management in this county, and moving to the Office of Emergency Management. So when your board receives the final draft of the administrative manual upcoming this year, I don't have the rolling calendar in front of me right now, but that will be reflected in that draft. The reason for this falling underneath Ms. Calvert's portfolio is to the point of the sheriff too, and that clear connection with the response that the sheriff's office has, yet realizing that all departments have a response role in emergencies in partnership with other jurisdictions. Mentioned we're cities, but CBOs, utilities, et cetera. So we've taken in this information and we'll come back with future discussion. So I think that's what I'm prepared to respond to. I have worked in structures that have a clear connection to public safety and have some of these clear plans in place. And what we've seen, and we've talked about, your board's talked about some of the events that have occurred. I also want to add severe heat. And so we've seen that in sheltering needs too. So the activation of emergency management has been a far more frequent trend line than we've seen in the past. And so that's also an important reason to be having this discussion.
You also, as you were speaking, it reminded me that in between my proposing that we have this type of exercise and actually having it, I had all kinds of questions and assumptions go through my head. And one that I said, no cheating, Catherine. You don't get to write any of this down and show up with 3 pages of questions. So that's why I just showed up with my head and that's it. One of the things that we do have responsibility for, and you talked about it in terms of roads, Well, if we're on our own for at least 2 weeks, what should we be comfortable that our ops groups, our roads crew and the CWS field ops team will be doing? And also garbage haulers. They have these big trucks, and in New York City, in the winter, their garbage trucks have plows. You know, and there's through RDPO and REMG, you know, all the road crews PGE has and whatnot. So construction equipment and how all that gets done. I don't need to know about it. I just need to know or want to have some comfort that the emergency management experts will be working all that out, and that to have the hope that after a couple weeks that the roads, some roads at least, will be functioning so that people can get to the fairgrounds and other sites that are emergency sites. And the West Side Oregon Food Bank place at Cornell and 170th, you know, will have stuff and things like that. So I didn't even bother to put that on the list because I was like, no, you know, that stuff will be in there. I just need to catch up with it.
And to that point, Chair, I think that's also the value of community tabletop planning exercises, which our emergency management team had put on hold in the midst of response to COVID. And so they are actively planning on an earthquake tabletop community-based exercise this year because some of
2022 or 3?
sorry, I'm already on 2023. Thanks for that clarification. 2023. And because we can't answer all the questions ourselves, we really need to work with partners and have understand what plans and the connectivity of plans of our partners to really be in response.
So that says to me that we want, so the BCC needs to know that the agency staff will be doing a tabletop. But what about at some point BCC and area electives having a tabletop?
So we'll come back with the clear design of what a tabletop, multiple tabletops looks like within that first quarter work plan.
Mhm, mhm. So I think one thing that each of us can do over the next few months is, you know, keep track of whatever other questions you may have in your role, but also get your stuff together. So at least that's out of your mind. And things build over time too. You know, it's not like I went to the hardware store and tried to do it all in one day. That was too overwhelming for my brain. So, yeah.
I think that's something we need to do.
Well, once I bought
Get it out of one day.
once I bought the Chevy Bolt and didn't want to take a big chunk of the trunk space like I do in the van, when I bought that, I ordered just a little tiny car kit that fits in essentially a lunchbox sack. Has a 1-day supply, enough to get me home, hopefully from PSB to home in Beaverton. If there are roads. Well, over hill, over dale, that's why I have hiking boots. And a pair of sneakers in each car.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So. Commissioner Rogers, anything else?
No, I thank you. I didn't get to hear all of your comments. I wish I could have. I would say as a general comment regarding this topic, it's a lot bigger than we all imagine it to be, and it is important. I keep stressing that earthquake's important, and I think we ought to be planning for it, but there are other things as well. You've mentioned them, active shooters. You mentioned issues that are, we could have more windstorms. We could have even have tornadoes, which sounds bizarre, but one hit in Vancouver a few years ago, and then we had one small one here in Oregon. So there are so many circumstances that are important, and if you don't plan, you're pretty ill-equipped to deal with the problem. So I appreciate the topic. I think it's a good one.
Thank you.
I think Commissioner Willie just mentioned that we all should be thinking about having cash on supply as well, because your ability to get money won't be, the ATMs won't be working as well, and cash will be an important piece as well.
Yeah, and I have a little collapsible shovel, and the other thing I'm gonna put in my kit is a big piece of wood. So if I need to move an electrical line out of my way, so I can get home. Stuff like
You
that.
be careful with that concept, please. I worked for an electric company for a long time, and that really is probably not the best approach.
I'm determined to get home,
Yeah, but
one way or the other. At least
Yeah,
I don't have to have enough weight
Yeah, you
to
got
get across the river anymore. Right, right. Okay, well, I think we've pretty much exhausted this topic for one day.
Yeah, can we take just 5-10 minutes so I could have John Wheeler just introduce his team?
Of course.
John, let's pull the table forward and then you can pull a chair up.
Don't mind all the stuff that's, and let me get you the mic.
Souvenirs for me.
That's Daniel's back. I think you're allowed to take.
What do you think? Are we all crazy, John?
Absolutely not. No, this is everything I've heard here is very sane. So, and I appreciate that.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. We have a safety issue here. Bye.
Sorry. Means.
You're fine.
Daniel, I'm touching your stuff. Sorry.
So, oh, well, and there they all are. Great.
Oh, cool. Hi,
I didn't know
team.
my strand.
Oh, will you introduce us to everyone?
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. Yes. So everybody, this is our team. I'll have them introduce themselves here in just
Ah.
a second.
Oh,
Before I did that, I did of course first want to say that I really appreciate this conversation you've all had today. These are all just excellent questions. And they are on the mark. They're very sane as well. So you're hitting it well. And I think it's really important to recognize that this kind of conversation at your level, at the elected official level, is really so central to and can really be a driver to the preparedness and the resilience of our community in a lot of ways. And so I think it's important to recognize the great work that you're doing by starting this conversation. And I love the idea of a work plan that we can develop and come back to you and report on and have this be a continuous improvement process. And to figure out how we can sustain it over time. It's easy to do this once. The bigger challenge is, what about your successors? What about the next generation that we want to look at? So I really very much appreciate that. A lot of your questions, again, they're spot on. And I will tell you, number one, that we have really great answers for some of your questions. We have decent answers or partial answers to others of your questions, and then we don't have answers to some of your questions, to be honest. There are gaps in there. This is a continuous effort. But we look forward to continuing that conversation. And as you called it, the great unknown is trying to sort of fill in a lot of those holes and to make known these things that are unknown to you now. So appreciate that. So let me introduce our team. I will have them introduce themselves, if I may, if they can unmute. But why don't we start with, and actually, first of all, just for the record here, I should probably introduce myself. My name is John Wheeler. I'm the manager of Washington County Emergency Management. I also serve as the director of a county-wide planning and preparedness organization called the Emergency Management Cooperative as well. And then I'm the chair currently this year of the Steering Committee for the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization, for which Commissioner Treese is your policy committee member. So, and with that, let me introduce my team. I'll start with Danelle, our supervisor. Danelle, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, board. My name is Danelle Hother. I've had the pleasure of serving Washington County for 2 years to the day. As the emergency management supervisor, my background is in various levels of project program management as well as organizational development. I've also spent almost 20 years in the U.S. Coast Guard Reserves working various elements of search and rescue. In the last 3 years, I have been designated the lead trainer for the Pacific Area Incident Management Team. So this is clearly what I love to do, my passion, and where I find my happy place. For Washington County Emergency Management, I supervise and support the team of coordinators, as well as responsible for our Emergency Operations Center, training, development, readiness, and functions.
Great, thanks, Neil. And David?
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm David Gasaway, one of the emergency management coordinators. Been with Washington County for 14 years. And prior to that, I did a lot of national response work with the American Red Cross for 17 years, saw all sorts of very large disasters around the United States. But anyway, here at Washington County, I focus on developing a lot of planning systems. I support our critical information management system, do a lot of other technology projects, and I'm also the coach for the planning section within our Emergency Operations Center. And we're the ones that work on situation reports that we push up to you all, as well as incident action plans, which guides the work of the Emergency Operations Center and a lot of other different reports and so forth. So
Great.
pleasure to be with you.
All right, thank you, David. And Ken?
Good afternoon. My name is Ken Schlegel. I'm Emergency Management Coordinator, working under the Land Use and Transportation Department, but within the Emergency Management team. I've been with the county for about 6 years this month. Prior to this, I was with Clean Water Services as a safety person, and also did a lot of emergency training with that company. And then several years as in the fire service and as a medic. Currently, I'm leading up the project for updating our natural hazard mitigation plan, which is right in line with some of the conversations that you've been having today. And also I am on a couple of the RDPO boards and work teams, particularly the one about the emergency transportation route project, which has been mentioned in the past, the disaster sanitation project work that was done a few years ago, and then others just in the general public works area. So I've been working on a lot of the things that you've been talking about, from the road and bridge and building and public works lens. So I'm glad to learn that you are interested in it, and we're doing great work and hope to continue in the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ken. And Alita?
Hi, good afternoon. Alita Fitz, pronouns she, her, hers. I am an emergency management coordinator. I've been with Washington County for about 3.5 years, and I focus on the human aspects of disasters, so public information, messaging content in our alert and warnings, increasing community preparedness and resilience, connecting with our community-based organizations, and improving processes and making sure that they are involved in our planning and response activities. I am also on a couple of regional projects. One is accessible alert and warning, so really working heavily to ensure that messages we put out are easily understood and ready for translation when we have the funding to do that. And then I am the incoming vice president of the Oregon Emergency Management Association.
Great. Thank you, Alita. And Aaron?
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Aaron Fox. I am 11 months today now with the county. I came to Washington County after 4 years with the city of Portland as part of their Emergency Management Bureau. I too am an emergency management coordinator. My fingers are in a bunch of different spots. I am the coach for the logistics section and a backup logistics section chief. I'm also our Bureau's public safety liaison, so working with our local firefighters or police, not EMS that relies with Health and Human Services. I also am an emergency communications specialist, what's called a communications unit leader with the state. I'm also the state's representative to the federal OXCOM working group. I volunteer as a communications technician with the IMT for the State Fire Marshal. And I'm sure there's more, but that's all I have for you today. I love being part of Washington County. It's great to be here.
All right. And last but not least, Laura.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Repass. I use she, her pronouns. I am the administrative assistant for this remarkably talented team. I support EOC operations. I support them in all of their efforts to prepare the community for any sort of disaster. And I am grateful to be here and a part of this. And I've been with emergency management for about 4 years now.
All right, great. Thank you, Laura. And I do want to mention we have one of our staff who is on vacation after spending about a week in Fort Myers, Florida, working in American Red Cross mega shelter, 2 shelters in Fort Myers, Florida. In a great assignment that she did for the Red Cross there. But Courtney Yan is her name. She's another one of our emergency management coordinators. She's our newest person on staff, and she is focused primarily on mass care and shelter work, doing a lot of really critical work there on how we're going to provide mass care and shelter, such as following an earthquake. So anyway, that's our team. Again, thanks so much for this, including us in this conversation. We all took a lot of notes, and we will follow up.
Impressive team. Very nice to meet you.
And,
Right, thank you.
and you all are part of a larger network, and some of what you do involves credentials too,
Right.
that we don't really have much visibility into. So thank you for having all that expertise.
Yeah, absolutely.
For your staff that come from Red Cross, I too come from Red Cross. So previously, so got a cohort going, it sounds like, in your department.
Red Cross veterans.
Yeah.
And Diane, do you have folks on your staff that do this kind of work too?
Yes, we do. It's integrated as part of our risk management program. So Chris Novotny and Taryn Vance, as well as working with the operations team. So we're very operations focused when it comes to deploying our EOC and management of the district's facilities. And we would be part of the emergency response countywide under a mass event like the ones we've been talking about. So yeah, we're kind of like an industrial business that would be focused on its facilities. So.
Great. Okay, well, that's it, folks. Unless you've got something else. Nope. I think we're all earthquaked out for the day.
But I just want to say again, thank you for having your team with us. It was great. And I'm really pleased that we did this. So thank you for bringing this forward.
You bet. I hope it was a little bit of fun.
Well, my anxiety is still pretty high. right?
Well, yeah. But a little bit different than
Yeah.
our ordinary
Yes.
meetings of
Because
presentation.
I think you.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you for covering that.
Yeah. All righty. What do you say we adjourn today's
All right.
roundtable? Goodbye. Bye, Commissioner Rogers.